My name is Guy, and before we kick off, just tap. It's not an extended task. Just tap it once. Just once. That like button. An extended task is a mechanic that has been added into Star Trek Adventures, and I think it is one of those mechanics which is a metagame tool more than it is anything else. What do I mean by that? As the GM, when you declare, all right, we are going into a extended task, the players, their mindset changes. They immediately are going, oh, okay. So we're going to have to defeat something that's going to require a couple of rolls. We're going to have to use our momentum carefully. We might generate some threat. This is going to be fun. So it sets up the mindset for the challenge to take place in the very first place. Secondly, an extended task is a way of you reducing the amount of time spent on a specific task. If you were to take every single ship repair action that is involving multiple decks, multiple problems, multiple situations, and role play it out, each of those could take easily an hour or more. You could, but that's boring. Adding in an extended task, suddenly it turns it into a challenge which everyone can then contribute to. And I think that's a lot of fun. Extended tasks work exactly the same way that Starship Shields work in Star Trek Adventures 2. It's all nicely streamlined. You have the progression track bar. And as a GM, this is one of the areas where I was going, help, how do I know what this progression bar should be? Help. The actual track itself is a number of successful checks that you need to have achieved. And it ranges from, between 10 and 16, 20 points. You might make it longer, you might make it less. But generally speaking, it's about 10 to 16 points that need to be resolved to complete this extended task. The way that the characters resolve it is, you will say, all right, I need to have a, let's say, daring plus engineering check. And the difficulty of this particular situation is X, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. The player character will then roll their dice, see if they manage to equal the difficulty number, and if they do, they then take the department value that their character has, and that is the amount of points that the progress track is decreased by. So if you have 5 in engineering, it would decrease by 5. So that gives you a little bit of a hint as to how many points your progress bars should have when you are creating your progress bars. If you have 5 players and you go, well, each player is going to roll, it's not a particularly difficult challenge that I have decided it to be, and so they are most likely to succeed on all of their rolls. Between 5 players, most of them should have an average of, say, 3 to 5 in any given department. So that's 15 points already if their rolls are okay and they have 3 in a particular department. So that's 1 round of rolling and it's done. So it's a useful thing for you to decide, okay, well, I want every player character to have to roll twice. Okay, well then 16 to 24 might be a more appropriate number. On the other hand, if you go, 3 people can solve this. It's not that complicated. It shouldn't take them that long. This is just a small little diversion to ramp up the tension a little bit. Well, then it might only need to be 8 to 10 points long in terms of the progress track. So that's the progress track. So your progress track is then divided at 50% and at 25%, exactly the same as Starship Shields. At 50%, you should have your first breakthrough. And what should happen at that first breakthrough? Well, that's up to you as the GM to decide, but something should shift, something should change to indicate that the player characters are working on this problem and that they are slowly finding solutions to this problem. Obviously, you set the difficulty for the entire progress track at the very beginning, and with those breakthroughs at 50% or 25%, you could increase or decrease the difficulty number that they're having to hit. For example, 7 of 9 trying to decode those very first Starfleet transmissions that Voyager received. Oh, well, I need to decode them and it's going to take several hours. It should be difficult to set up, and then over time it should get easier and easier. So, the extended tasks have a resistance value, exactly the same as your Starship Shields have resistance. The extended tasks resistance is the value deducted from the department score of the character when they successfully make a check. So if your resistance is 3, which would be really tough, any character who successfully performs a task, if their department is a score of 3 or less, they're reducing that progress bar by 0. If their department is 5, they're only reducing it down by 2. So as the resistance goes up, the progression slows down. Again, it's useful if you've only got 3 players and you want to make it feel like it's a really tough challenge. You might only give them 10 points on the progress track, but the difficulty might be 3 or 4. A difficulty of 5 means that the players are almost stuck in terms of being able to solve this thing. There is a way that they can do it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. When you hit that 50% progress on the progress tracker, that's when resistance might change. Oh, well, suddenly resistance has dropped from 3 to 2, or it's become more difficult, so resistance has increased. Trying to hack into that Obsidian Order secret base's door code at 50%, additional security measures kick in because the door is designed to challenge the character even more. Difficulty and resistance are a balancing act that you will have to decide for yourself. The higher the resistance, the slower the progression. The higher the difficulty, again, slower the progression, and the more inclination there is to spend momentum to try and get those dice to tick over. If both difficulty number and resistance are really high, you are creating a very slow progress track. And that's the key to my next point. As I have said before, extended tasks allow you to control the pace of your game. An extended task, if it is relatively straightforward, can increase the pace of your game. Things will happen faster. On the other hand, if your difficulty is high and your resistance is high, it will slow the game down as the players are trying to crawl past this task, and it's just taking forever. If your progress bar is too high, you've gone, oh, it's 30 points. It becomes a roll fest, which is just boring. So your pace and your tension are controlled by your progress track. Now, how do you make the progress track speed things up? How does it speed up things? One of the things that you have to bear in mind is that when you are just letting player characters freeform their decisions, they're making choices, oh, we want to interrogate this character. All right, well, how are you doing it? Describe your processes. Talk me through it. Each player has to come up with their own solution. Each player has to think of things and get distracted about other things and go here and go there. This is fun. It really is fun, and it is normal role-playing. On the other hand, if you turn the interrogation into an extended task, well, now you are focusing the mindset of the player characters because you are the one who is prompting them for the roles. This could also be with inexperienced players who are not familiar with Star Trek terms. You can help guide them, teach them the terms as they are playing, but also it helps them to focus their answers. You're not asking them, what are you doing? You're saying, your character is now trying to realign the magnetic constrictors of the plasma injectors. The players might not know what the hell that is, but it sounds cool, and when they succeed at the role, you're like, well done, you have now aligned the magnetic constrictors to within 0.25 microns. Yay! When it comes to controlling the tension of the game, progress trackers are an easy way to remind you as the GM to insert 2 things: pain and pressure. The pressure is usually time pressure. You have to get the warp core back online, otherwise we can't vent the poisonous gas, and if you don't vent the poisonous gas in 5 minutes, we're all dead. Aha, you have the pressure of 5 minutes. So here's your progress tracker. You gotta solve this thing in 5 minutes, and each of the rolls that you are doing counts as 1 minute. You have 5 rolls to succeed, okay? When you get to 50%, you gain a minute. When you get to 25%, you gain another minute, if you get there at all. Difficulty is 3, and the resistance is 2, let's say. That's tough. That is a tough check. And there's the pressure of the time factor. Every check is a minute long. The fact that the pain would be you pass out, you are anesthetized, you lose your memory, you transphase into a different dimension, you just take damage. That's entirely possible. An extended task for a crew of a starship trapped inside of a nebula. Every single round that the characters are rolling, the ship suffers a 8 damage electrical discharge from the plasma field. In which case you take the pressure off. Now, sit here for as long as you like. I don't have any problems. You want to take 12 hours to get out of this nebula? Go ahead. The pain or the pressure, or both, if you're really evil, will add to your entire extended task check. Something that you should not be doing. This is important, folks. Something that you should not be doing. Do not just ask for rolls. Okay, make a daring and security check. Okay, great. You go down 3 points. Right, make a control and science check. Great, you go down another 2 points. Woohoo, look at all the progress. That's boring. That's not the idea of how an extended task should work at all. All right, Lieutenant, you need to scan this device before it explodes. I need you to give me an insight and science check, please. Oh, you succeeded? You decreased the progress bar by 4? Fantastic. Your scans reveal that this device contains X. Describe what's happening. You remember, you are controlling the tension and the pace. If you describe it as just flat rolls, that's as much excitement as your game is going to have. It's going to be flat. On the other hand, do not simply describe every dice roll for hours. For hours. Yes, I know you might like the sound of your own voice. You might like the sound of your descriptions. You might think you're making it amazingly wonderful. You're not an author. You are a game master. You might be an author too, in which case I look forward to reading your book, but not playing in your game if you are going to run your games like your books. Describe what's happening, make it punchy, make it tense, lead on to the next thing, and move on. Do not delay. Something that you can do, and I would encourage you to do this once or twice, not every roll. Not every roll, is ask your PC, ask your player, so how did you do it? You've managed to scan this device and you've discovered X. How did you do it? Let the player stretch their description a little bit. Well, I used the tricorder and I did a multispectral scan on the device, paying particular attention to the power sections. Okay, cool. That's wonderful. You've added in some little data. It's been cool. We've experienced some stuff. Your characters can always spend 2 momentum to add 1 to their impact. Now, what is impact? I haven't really mentioned impact simply because it's just a term for the amount of reduction on the progress bar. Literally, you use the department that has been assigned by the DM, and if your department's 5, your progress tracker reduces by 5. That's called your impact. If you spend 2 momentum, you can increase your impact by 1. So instead of decreasing it by 5, you decrease it by 6. I want to just mention that I would do an extended task once, twice, 3 times an adventure, no more. Maybe twice in an afternoon session. So if your session's 4 hours long, 2 extended tasks maximum. Otherwise, it's like, but why don't we just do extended tasks all the time? They are tools, but not the only tool. There are many tools in your box, so make sure that you are utilizing all of them. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know as well, do you want more of these kind of in-depth tutorials on Star Trek Adventures, or should we be doing something a little bit more interesting with the channel? Now, next week, I will be looking at how do we fix the film Star Trek Generations using Star Trek Adventures 2. How do we fix Generations? If you didn't like Generations, if you were like me and you watched and you were like, I mean, that was a great 2-part episode, but was it a movie? I don't think so. And it may all hinge around a single fact of a phone call between the producer, Rick Berman, and one of the actors that I think set the tone for the film in just the wrong direction. Anyway, we'll be back next week for that. Until then, live long and happy gaming.